days ago, an online friend of mine posted asking for transition advice. She couched everything around the idea that if she went through with transition, her wife was going to leave her, and she was basically going to end up broke and homeless. Now, as someone whose wife has left her, has been completely broke, still kind of am, and has been homeless multiple times, it didn't quite sit well with me. So, we're going to talk about it. Welcome back to the channel, friends. I'm Alexis, aka Transcenderella, and this series is one of those situations, I call it Let's Talk, where I talk about issues that I see happening in the community, and this is definitely one that I see a lot of. So I'm gonna dive right in. So I see this excuse online, and let's be real, it is an excuse. An excuse where, oh, I can't transition because, and then here comes some thing. I'm not going to have enough money. I'm not, I'm going to lose family. I'm going to lose my kids or this or that. And I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off here. Most of that's going to happen no matter what you do. Whether you are transitioning, whether or not, if you don't transition, you are likely going to sink further and further down into depression and, develop anxiety, that all those lovely things that love to come together and make you a miserable person to be around. So the question is, what's stopping you? And the answer, quite frankly, is nothing. Nothing is stopping you from transitioning. The reality is, transition will likely cost you everything. Having been through it now 3 years, and I know plenty of other trans people, there isn't a cost that some of us haven't gone through. And it's easy to say, looking at me as a YouTuber, that I'm coming from a place of privilege. And I sort of understand your point, but if you know my story, which I'm going to share in a little bit, that's not true. I've transitioned twice. This is my second go around. There's going to be a whole separate video about my detransition and all of that. But suffice to say, my first transition, and not even really the transition, just coming out, and not even as fully trans, but as non-binary at the time, I lost my wife. I did not see my child for 2 full months and then had an entire year of supervised custody. And I had to live with my parents at a time because I didn't have enough money because I was paying for a divorce. I couldn't live anywhere on my own. So I was basically crashing on my parents' couch. It was not a wonderful experience. And I was lucky enough that I had my, supportive parents well into my 30s. But there's, pretty much not a price I haven't paid to be who I want to be and who I am. So it goes beyond that, though, at least for me. Because for me, going into my second transition, where I am now, like I said, I had to detransition as part of that whole experience because my divorce got so nasty. Again, for another video. But as a result, I had to readjust to living as a cis person. A trans person trapped in a cis person's life. But I met my current wife, reestablished my life, had a job, everything had gotten back to normal. But I was miserable. And I was paying double the price because I knew what freedom felt like. And I was having to stuff all of that down. So when you talk about but it's so scary, to potentially lose everything. I'd already done it once. And now here I was feeling that urge again that I really do need to transition. Having to go to my wife, who we'd only been married I think about a year at that point. We started to go through COVID and everything, but we we had to sit down and have a conversation about, she knew my past, but she had told me then that's not what she signed up for, and I completely understood. I walked into that conversation knowing there was a good chance I lost everything again. Thankfully, enough time had gone by and she'd seen the way I'd been changing and the things I needed to experience that she understood. Transition was something that I absolutely needed to do. And I got very lucky in that I have an incredibly supportive wife who is sitting here off camera, trying not to listen because she's probably going to get sad and upset. But she was wonderful. And she's been my biggest ally. And I can't thank her enough for her support. And I know that not all of you have that. But what I'm trying to say is even someone who initially indicated she may not be supportive, things can change. Because the other thing is the part I didn't tell you yet. My first wife, before I came out, was telling me, I was out to her long before I was out to the world. She had no problem with it. She said she loved me no matter what. She supported me. Everything was great. It wasn't until I started telling people that she had a problem. So people can surprise you in both ways. The moral of this story is you need to be prepared to lose everything. Transition is the most important decision you can ever make in your life because it's allowing yourself to become who you are. Your full self. Your full self is your trans self. And you need to accept that because otherwise you will always be you won't be whole. And you deserve better than that. If you're sitting there saying, well, I can't transition because of this law, or, I live in Florida, so trust me, I get it. Move. Get out. And I know it's not easy to say that, and it's not easy to do that. I'm going through moving out of Florida right now. It's a nightmare. But if you need to be yourself, you need to move if your state doesn't allow it. The only exception I'm going to give to this is if you are a minor and you are stuck at home in an unsafe place, be patient. I know it's hard. I know it's soul crushing at times, but you will get through it. It does get better. I promise you it gets better. Even as someone who did this late in life, I went through some very difficult periods between when I first actually came out to my first wife and when we finally decided to get divorced, and it was hell. It gets better. You will be free eventually. So don't take the time for granted. You will want to be your full self every single second you can. And I promise you it is worth it, no matter the cost. So have courage, friends, and be kind, especially to yourself.